Our Tuesday noon concert is a wonderful piano recital by George Li, who has chosen, to me, a fascinating program. All piano music in our repertoire is unique to the composer, and particularly in the style that they write for piano. So we have Beethoven writing massive amounts of piano music in the style of Beethoven. But then if we go forward, everything changes with, for instance, Chopin, which is a completely different way to write for the piano. Liszt, a completely different way to write for the piano. Brahms, completely different. In today's program, we have two incredibly idiomatic and distinct ways of composing and making the piano sound in a very specific and idiomatic way for that composer. We start with Debussy, who totally changed the sound that we're accustomed to from a virtuoso piano. This is French music. And music tends to be really influenced by the composer's language. The French language has a completely different syntax from German, or Russian for that matter. And the way that sounds are made by Debussy, particularly late Debussy, is very unique. A combination of fluid virtuosity, which we're accustomed to from many piano composers, with a structural density and kind of format which juxtaposes different texture without necessarily developing. So we go from one texture to another texture to another texture, and this forms blocks of sound which are very idiomatic to Debussy. The pieces are called images, and at Debussy's time there was a great kind of symbiosis between music and the visual arts in France. So Impressionism was across the board, music and visual arts. And so the idea of pieces as images, as images, is very close to someone like Debussy. He writes the first one as reflections in water. And I'm always fascinated by how certain sounds, particularly on the piano, translate to fluidity, to water sounds for us, because there's no real reason why they should, but they do. And this is a great example of a water piece. And water was very central to Debussy altogether, orchestral pieces, La Mer. So we have the water reflections. We have then an homage to Rameau, which has very little to do with Rameau, except that Debussy happened to be working on a large piece of Rameau's, editing it, and felt this connection. It's more an emotional connection than some stylistic reference at all. And he finishes with a fantastic perpetual motion, very virtuosic, and that's the first piece on George's program. He then switches to, again, the most individual, idiomatic kind of piano writing, this time from the great Russian composer Mussorgsky. And this is a fascinating piece because it stems again from visual arts. In this case, a painter named Hartmann, who was a close friend of Mussorgsky, he died, and afterwards Mussorgsky and another friend mounted a great exhibition of Hartmann paintings. In writing a piece which he wanted to write for Hartmann, Mussorgsky came up with this fascinating form of what he called pictures at an exhibition. And in this piece, he writes about several pictures, and the greatest inspirational thing that he did was imagine walking in a museum to see the pictures, and this promenade of starting with a promenade, walking into the exhibition, and then pieces reflecting each of the paintings, but with the promenade in between. And it changes. It doesn't stay exactly the same, but reflects his emotional journey through these different pieces. The piano writing is really unlike anyone else. It's very virtuosic, but somehow sparse. There's a sparsity to it which allows for harmonies which are very stark and very powerful. And he manages with the different paintings to come up with an enormous amount of differentiation in the textures, so that we have each piece having a totally different texture, ending with a huge orchestral kind of chorale, which he calls the Great Gate of Kiev. This gate didn't exist and was never built, but there was an idea about it. When I say that it's orchestral, it actually became orchestral. So at a certain point, Ravel was charged with orchestrating the pictures from an exhibition by Mussorgsky, and that's an orchestral piece which is played quite often. Two fantastically different, major, huge piano pieces played by George Li.